Module. In the first module, we talked about kind of the background of the SMS and the history and some of the mechanisms and elements of SMS. What we want to talk about here is building the SMS. We really want to dig into performance measures, and then we're going to talk about the director's measures. Again, we're recording this. When we get to the secret part of the briefing, we'll actually stop that, and we'll let them kind of dismantle and head out, and then we'll have Charles Bushman come in and talk about the director's performance measures. So you can see the impact that this has on the whole of the organization. Did you guys move down? Okay, it was just a little, I thought maybe my vision, I was like, God, they seem strangely close, but yet they're in the same seats. Very kind of weirdish. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Now let's be careful in the next class. All right, so let's go to the next module. Good. Let's talk about measures, everyone's favorite topic. I may need the flip chart at some point here, so I'll get it over here. All right, so give me some of your measure problems that you've come across. So we've talked about stale data, old data, things we've already collected forever, doesn't tell us anything new. What else?
When we were looking at measures, sometimes the first ones that came up weren't necessarily going to drive the behavior we wanted.
So we picked some measures that came up and they weren't driving the behavior. That's a key point, driving the behavior. Trying to quantify something that's inherently qualitative. Sometimes, you know, yeah, did we collaborate well? Give you a 38, absolutely, nailed it. What's that mean? Okay, right, so, you know, that's got no context. The quantifying and adding a number doesn't necessarily help us. Other thoughts on measures? Too many measures. Hand counting. Oh boy, I hope we're really not doing that. But yeah, I mean, we don't have a system in place to actually get the data easily. You know, multiply that times, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40, you know, that's a lot of work to just get a piece of data. I'm sure this isn't a personal example that you're providing around collecting data for another agency that's mandated on a quarterly basis. I didn't get the sense that you have any experience of that. But that could happen in a real setting, although you have a notional example. Okay? That can be frustrating because you have to provide the data, and it's like, what are we doing this for? You know, is anyone even looking at this? You ask these questions like, who gets this? What do they do with it, right? It begs all these questions. Why do they need it? What report is this for? And these are some of the real challenges with performance measures. So let's go to the next page. Here's a quote for you. It's a basic definition, and I like to use this definition. It works for me. It's from one of my colleagues, Andy Neely, and I do doctoral work overseas, and he and I work together. But a performance measure can be quantified as a metric used to quantify the efficiency and or effectiveness of an action, okay? So it's some type of quantification of efficiency and effectiveness. So you as a manager, you know, the people in your organization take some action. We collaborated. I want to somehow gauge the efficiency and effectiveness of that. And ideally, it would be nice to quantify that. Now, I would argue in that collaboration example, you can quantify it. But we have to be clear on, like, what are we trying to do and what are we trying to gauge, and we have to think about it first. Now, the good thing about performance measures is you can measure almost anything. I can measure what's the percentage of women to men in this class, what's the height of the average people, what's, you know, who's wearing, you know, black clothes versus white. I mean, we can quantify. The problem with that is what? That doesn't mean it tells us anything, right? So you can quantify anything, but it may not tell you anything, right? Or anything useful that we need to know. And this is where we start running into challenges with performance measures. So this is going to seem pretty theoretical, but I promise you it will become practical very soon. When we go back and do research and we look at literature and we examine organizations' uses of performance measures, we find that they tend to fall into one of these three categories or reasons. And I'll give you some illustrations here in a minute. Organizations use measures to control performance, to check health and progress, and to challenge assumptions. Now, this is important for this to start answering your question, okay? So the individual quantification of anything is actually not important. It's the purpose for which you make the quantification that matters. And the purpose is going to dictate, in many respects, whether it's operational, tactical, strategic, regulatory, mandatory, or otherwise. So control performance, okay? So one of the reasons organizations and managers measure is to control performance, okay? Meaning there's a set of non-negotiable performance standards that have to be met in the organization, and we use measures to ensure they're met. Well, what does that mean? Okay, imagine you work in an oil refinery. Does anyone ever worked in an oil refinery? Okay, usually there's somebody that's done something close, okay? So imagine you're the shift supervisor in an oil refinery, and there's a giant gauge, right? There's a big gauge that measures the pressure that goes through the pipe, to the refinery pipe, okay? And it's got a brass rim, and it's got a shiny glass cover, and there's a needle in there, and the needle, there's red, yellow, and green, and where's the needle? It's sitting where? In the red, yellow, or the green? Ideally, it's in the green, or we have a whole set of other issues we're going to have to deal with right now. So ideally, it measures pressure, it's quantified, and the needle sits in the green. You know as the shift supervisor that the needle needs to stay in the green. What happens if it starts to move into the yellow? That's bad. That's probably not good. And if it gets to the red, there could be a disaster. There could be an accident. The pressure in this particular pipe is getting too great. It could explode. There could be a huge, literally disaster, okay? So most of the time, though, when you walk by as a shift supervisor, it's in the green. Do you need to do anything? What do you need to do if it's in the green? Nothing. There's really nothing to do. You don't need to get your team and say, go and sit down. Let's take a look at that. What do you think? Looks green. Looks green to me. Are you colorblind? Good. Okay, it's green. What do we need to do? Nothing. Well, we should talk about it. What do we want to talk about? What color is it? Well, I just told you it's green. I mean, do you see? I mean, it's just real. The point is, in something when you're trying to control performance, there isn't a lot to do other than make sure that the non-negotiable standard is being met. You take action if something is getting out of control, right? That's usually, that's out of control. We need to do something. We need to bring it back under control. But for the most part, a set of measures that organization uses just maintains control. Can you think of anything in your organization that you use a measure just to make sure the standards are being met? So back to this idea of a regulatory compliance. We just want to make sure that the standards being met. We just need to provide that data just to ensure that we're meeting this, nothing else is happening, okay? That's a lot of measures oftentimes in organizations, but we don't have to do a lot with it. More commonly, we use measures to check health and progress. What I mean is, every division here has a set of basic business, I'll call them business or organizational processes that deliver things, that provide a service, provide a product, whatever, that do something, okay? And we manage these day to day. We want to make sure that those basic processes are functioning well. So we quantify performance to make sure that we have consistent efficiency and effectiveness of action. So somebody give me an example. Actually, we already had one. The security division. You know, one of the things that you do as your basic business operation is process background checks. We put a measure on that to make sure, how long is it taking? You know, it's not appropriate as a manager when you're managing time and money to not know what the performance of a basic process is. If you work in finance division, how long does it take for you to close the books? How long does it take, how much of the money is going? I mean, there's a basic set of process. Somebody else give me a different example from a different division. We had science and technology, security, finance. Give me a basic process in weapons of mass destruction that you do part of your organization. It doesn't have to be your